Well, good evening, regional councillors. My name is Scott Neufeld. I'm an assistant professor of community psychology at that other university across the street, Brock, where I research and teach students about how stigma and discrimination towards people who use drugs, people who are experiencing homelessness or poverty, and people who have challenges with their mental health acts as a determinant of their health and well-being. And I want to speak in support of the winter weather emergency procedure for an unhoused residents motion tonight. Specifically about the necessity of doing everything possible to get people who are unhoused inside during cold weather conditions, which I think this motion nicely puts at 0 degrees. And part of my work as a community-based researcher is that I've had the privilege of working alongside many people that are experiencing homelessness in your communities, addiction, mental health challenges. One of the outcomes of that work has been forming a local advocacy group that's meant to be by and for folks that experience homelessness, that experience mental health and addiction. We call ourselves the Niagara Advocates with Lived and Living Experience, or NAIL. You might have seen us outside tonight. We held a vigil in memorial of a member of our community, Bob Allen, who died just over a year ago on James Street in downtown St. Catharines, and in collaboration with a local reporter and Bob's sister Elizabeth, who's here to speak to you tonight as well, I was able to watch the really tragic surveillance footage that shows Bob's final hours. And in that video, we see Bob, a man who had just a few days prior been released from the Thorold jail into homelessness, first landing in a hotel room that his sister helped him out with, but otherwise receiving very little in the way of supports to make a good transition out of jail. A man who just a few hours before had been turned away from an emergency homeless shelter run by the Niagara region because of an outbreak of some unspecified illness. I don't know about you, but personally I'd rather get a cold or something than be forced to die in the cold, as Bob did. We see Bob in this video in a blizzard, struggling, crawling across James Street, fighting for survival. We see Bob collapse at the side of the road and slowly stop moving, laying still for several hours in the video as snow softly continues to fall on him. We see Bob, someone who friends and family recall as a talented musician, a hilarious, joyful presence in any room that he was in, someone who is missed by friends in the community who held a moment of silence for him just this morning at the emergency shelter and breakfast program in St. Catharines. We see Bob, someone who was remembered as a man who loved this place, who loved this city, who loved his home, who had struggled here, but who loved it nevertheless. But it seemed like that night, this place, Niagara, St. Catharines, did not love him back. Most heartbreaking, the numbers of people who drove or walked past Bob that night, which you can see in the video, as he lay there motionless in the gutter, in a blizzard, his temperature dropping. I don't know what's more heartbreaking, all the people who seemed not to notice him, or the few who did seem to notice him, looked at him, walked away, did nothing. A few hours later, workers from the city of St. Catharines noticed him. They called EMS, they took him to hospital, they tried to rewarm him and save his life, but it was too late. Bob Allen died on January 27, 2025, frozen to death on your streets, turned away from your shelters. It was minus 8 degrees Celsius that night. It was not minus 10, it was not minus 15, it was minus 8 that night, which is more than cold enough to kill someone who's vulnerable, someone who's struggling in your communities. Now, frequently, when my students and we look across all kinds of communications in this region, how people talk about people who are unhoused and homeless, something that we see is this tendency to want to blame the victim, to say, well, they did it to themselves. They made bad decisions. They shouldn't have, had those experiences, or the trauma they experienced, or the addiction that they faced. But as elected officials and leaders here tonight, you have a chance to show leadership in the kind of community that we want Niagara to be. The motion before you reflects the idea that nobody deserves to die freezing outside. It reflects that minus 15, minus 10 is still too cold to be the threshold at which we open up additional emergency shelter beds to prevent cold weather-related death or injury. Several years ago, this regional council voted to support the advocacy work of Alicia Marshall and Steve Seuss, who's here tonight, that we declare a state of emergency on homelessness, addiction, and mental health. We are still in that emergency. Things have not got better. People are dying and suffering on your streets. Bob Allen should be here tonight, but he's not because we failed him. Please don't be like the many people who drove or walked by him as he froze to death in your streets. Nobody should die freezing outside. Please support the motion. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Doctor.